It's the 27th of July. Time sure is flying. Took a few days off for a 4-day music festival in Temple, just a little northwest of here. And that was a lot of fun in the RV. And we had our issues, but we dealt with them. And RVs are a lot like boats. There's always something that needs to be fixed. But that was a lot of fun. So I spared you a day's worth of sanding yesterday. What I did was I went around the entire forward cabin area and cleaned everything out. Place became a dumping bin for stuff, so that's all out. I sanded all of the seams that I'm going to fillet and tape today, and this goes all the way around the cabin front and in the main cabin area. Where I'm standing right now is where the head will be. The other side is the sort of utility section, and there will be a workbench for Lori's sewing machine and storage cabinet, electrical box, air conditioner goes on that side, etc., etc. So, but what I've got to do today is this forward trunk cabin is going to be permanently attached to the cabin roof and the cabin sides, and that will tie it all together. And I've got probably 70 or 80 feet of tape to do, so I'm going to mix up my first batch of glue, get the fillets on, go all the way around with fillets, and then I'll come back later on and I'll put in stitch tapes to hold them, because I've got these temporary little pieces of pipe here, using the zip ties to locate the sides to the top, so I can only do in between them for now, and then I'll come back and redo the whole fillets and tape the whole joint. So that's what I'm up to today. So I've kind of changed up how I mix up my wood flour glue. Usually I just mix it up like this in a bin, and it's wood flour and Capucil, and then I dump the epoxy in on top of it. But I have had a couple of small spots where you don't get the epoxy and it comes out a little dry, so now I'm mixing the epoxy first, and I'll blend the two together as I go. So for the next minute and 30 seconds, enjoy me stirring the cup. Usually I'm stirring the pot, this time I'm stirring the cup. Make sure you scrape your sides and the bottom, get everything thoroughly mixed. This is a marine grade epoxy from a company called Boat Builder Centro of Vero Beach, Florida, and I've used this product almost exclusively since the start of the build of this boat, and I have yet to have a failure that wasn't human error related. And a couple of those were earlier on in the build, learning to use the sticky stuff dispenser, and once we forgot to refill the catalyst or the hardener, and we ended up with an awful mess on our hands. And it was on a fairly large layup as well, but we got better as time went by. And then a couple of years ago, the outlet pipe on the resin side of the sticky stuff leaked, and it caused a massive over-catalyzation of the epoxy, which is not a fatal error, but that epoxy will come out a lot more brittle than normal. So before I discovered it, I had done most of the chain locker, so I went over it later with another layer of glass properly catalyzed, etc. And it is what it is, but you learn from your mistakes. I hope nobody's keeping count, because I forgot, but I think we're almost there. So there's a little bit of noise in the background. I'm sorry, that's the fans going down here. There's now that the cabin top's on, there's virtually no ventilation. And it's going to get warm today. 27, I think, is the high. I hear that's a beautiful winter day in Australia, 27 degrees. This is a fairly large batch of glue. I'd say it's about 15-16 ounces, but I've got a lot of seams to glue here today, so. And you can see it's a little wet yet. It's just running off, so we just go back and we add a little more filler. Oops. Fine-tune the process. For the fillets, you want it fairly stiff so it'll hold its shape. The tape will go on while the fillets are still wet. These are not cosmetic but in any way, shape, or form, so what they actually end up looking like, as long as they're smooth and the tape can drape over it properly, I'm happy. So that's just a little goopy yet, so I'm gonna add just a wee bit more. Takes practice to do this. Of course, I've had years and years and years of mixing goop, so I wouldn't say I'm the best at it, but kind of have a feel for it now. That's better. You see that? It stays on the stick. So now we're going to transfer this to our piping bag. This is new for me this year. Typically I'd used extra heavy duty baggies, but I know there's quite a few guys have been using the piping bags and it works really well for them, so I figure they're smarter than I am. I'll just go with the flow. We're almost there. So one of the things I do when I, instead of tying up the bag, is I use a little cheapy zip tie. Works for me. There you have it. So sure to go. Snip the tip. Start laying out a bead. So there's the fellets I just put in. Let's see if I can get the focus. They're not pretty, but again, they're not cosmetic, so I'm not going to let you follow me around. I'm just going to go around the whole cabin, and I'll come back when we're ready to tape stitch these into place. So this is the tape I'm using when I do the little stitches. It's a lightweight 6-ounce plain weave cloth, and it will just span the gap for now until I go over it with some heavier biax later. So I'm just going to mix the epoxy, and I always pre-wet the areas that I'm going to tape, and we'll get that process on the go. Shouldn't take too long. Didn't take me long to do the fillets. 10 minutes maybe. Once these tape stitches are in, I'll be able to pull all of the little spacers out, pull these zip ties, and then I can do a full fillet and full tape of each joint. Can't do them all in the same day because I use a slow hardener, but it works. I'm just going through and I'm pre-wetting the plywood on either side of where the tape joint will be. Not a big deal. This plywood's so old, it really soaks up epoxy, that's for sure. Get your frame here. Sorry, I can't see this one. Hope you don't mind staring at my armpit. It's nice and cool today, so I don't have to race along like a jackrabbit. I got a string coming out like this. I just leave it because if you try and cut it or anything right now, it's just gonna all go to shit on you. So this is the same process I used when I did the forward cabin bulkheads. So which you saw me do in great detail previously. I like using this tape for stitches over biax because it wets out really easily. It's really nice to work with. And again, it's just going to hold the panel in place. Okay, I'm gonna go around and finish the rest, and then we'll come back a little later on. Okay, we gotta change things up a little bit here. We're going to take the upper seam on the cabin front that was previously tape stitched into place, and added some more filler to it to make the fillets a little more, a little better. And so now we're going to add some of our 17-ounce biaxial tape to that seam, and that will be rock solid, and so it's finished tomorrow. Well, we can into perform the same process on the seams that we stitched today. It's going to be a lot of little spots that we'll have to do later. We just can't do them all in one day. It's pretty warm in here, even with the fans going now. So I noticed the last batch of epoxy I got from the tray just as I finished. So kind of having to pick up the pace a little bit. But this process, you'll see, will let out the tape on this board, both sides, and that makes it easier to apply, especially when you're working over your head. Sure it will. Straight the sides and the bottom. And back over here on the other side with my piece of wetted tape. Just gonna lay that up in there. Hopefully it'll stay there until I can go get my roller. Ideally, it would be nice to do a seam like this in one contiguous piece all the way across, but because of the curve of the hull, curve of the cabin front, I ended up having to make a whole bunch of darts in it to get it to conform to the curve. These biaxial fabrics don't form over complex shapes very well without curves in them. which kind of defeats the whole purpose. So I think generally, I think when I did the cabin front, I did it in 3 or 4 pieces, and we'll continue with that same strategy here today. So.
These biaxial fabrics take a lot more work to wet out with epoxy. I think it's they're more ideally suited to things like vinyl ester resin. They're absorbing the resin into themselves. I also think the binders, the stitching that's used to hold the warps and the wefts of the fabric together are designed to dissolve in the solvents that are in the vinyl ester resin.
The underside of the cabin top isn't very fair. That's my fault. When I stretched the hull, it widened the hull, so the cabin is actually 5.5 inches wider than designed, and that's caused me no end of problems. But I have nobody to blame but myself for modifying the design. But we intend to insulate the bulkhead and the deck head, and there'll be a hull liner, so none of this will ever be seen by human eyes again, not as long as I live. So. really like working with the foam paint rollers over wet fillets because the dome shape on the end gives you a nice smooth curved transition from one panel to the next. And all it takes is a little bit of pressure because the fillet epoxy is still pretty soft. It will conform to the shape of the roller, which gives you, I think, an almost ideal fillet. Okay. I've got to run over and mix a little bit more epoxy back in this flash. I'm sorry, folks. I had to put on the last couple of scenes without filming them because my hands got too sticky to touch the camera. So, but I did. That corner is taped. The seam all along the top of the cabin front, the cabin top, taped, and that corner taped. And I was up to my elbows in the epoxy, so. Sorry I couldn't get it all filmed, but I do use up all the epoxy, and what was left I coated that forward panel. Eventually they'll all get done, but that's epoxy that otherwise would have ended up in the garbage. So I think I'm going to leave it here for now. It's getting a little warm. Lights are going out. And there you have it. I'll throw in a few pictures of what this piece looks like, and we'll come back tomorrow and finish these seams off. They're just tape stitched, and tomorrow they'll get the full fillet and tape treatment, so they'll be solid. I will also have to do that edge on the outside, so that'll get started tomorrow too. Thanks for looking in. Take care. Bye.